Hello everybody. I'm just talking to you just now about nesting dolls. Um, you may have watched my first nesting dolls video. If you have, then you will know a little bit about my thoughts around using nesting dolls. I'm in a park, so there is a bit of ambient noise, but I'm hoping you can hear me pretty clearly. And I've brought these three nesting dolls to just as an example. I know you can get quite a lot more in a set than three, but for the purpose of this and to sit in this frame quite nicely, I'm using three. All right. So this is another of the main ways that I use nesting dolls with clients. I'm person-centered. I'm passionately person-centered, and I often believe that whenever I struggle with a client for whatever reason, or they struggle, that going back to person-centered is often the answer. Despite my best efforts around other avenues, it's quite often I just allow them to have space. But I'm going to talk to you a full video about that, about when to use creativity rather than words or silence, no words. So the client may quite often, I think this is the best way really, they might see these on the shelf because all my stuff is out on the shelf in the room, and they might spot these on the shelf and express an interest. So that's quite a nice way of opening up the possibility of working with stuff like this. But I think it can, when your client's talking about, hello, dog's come to see me, hello, nice one. I think when a client's talking about, there's a bit of me that feels like this, there's a bit of me that feels like that. Hello, you okay? There's a bit of me that feels like this, or that I think there is a part of me that feels like, and the vocabulary seems to suggest that they're exploring that there's actually more than one part to themselves, or there's maybe some restlessness between parts of themselves. This is perfect for exploring that, because what I do is quite literally I explore parts of self with nesting dolls, and you can have as many sets as you want for this. It doesn't have to be one set, it can be a few sets, it can be many different dolls that you can have, nesting dolls that you can have, and you can lay them out, or you can just put them in front of your client and say, right, wire in, because it's nice to have a selection. I quite like plain ones, and I'll tell you why. Because sometimes when you have ones that are like bears, or they're ladies with painted all nice and embellished, they can have some significance to a person, or their expressions might have some significance, or the colours or whatever. And it's they may have, it may be actually useful, those things that that they remind the client of, but it might also be not useful and get in the way. So I like plain ones. I've always tended to use my plain ones most, because I think it gives a total blank slate of freedom of client exploring this in any way that they like, without any sort of, oh, this one looks a bit anxious, don't they? This one looks a bit, and it sort of influences where the work goes. That dog really loves me, and it's mutual. I love dogs. So what I invite the client to do is I invite the client to pick dolls that represent parts of themselves. So they might pick a really big one and say, oh, this is, for the sake of argument, this is disciplined, rigid, likes routine and structure. That's in my mind, that's the biggest part of me. And then they might pick, oh, this little one here, this is my creativity, this is my spontaneity, this is the young part of me that don't really get a look in. So okay, so they're very small. And then this is the part of me that's really, really passionate and loving and self-sacrificing, whatever, you name it, the sky's the limit. I'm giving examples, yeah, so that they explore themselves in this way. And it's very interesting that they choose what size they choose, or this is the most to me, this is the least to me, because then you can start illuminating more about the client's sort of situation, and how they feel about self. Because you can sort of say, maybe, well, the client, you can identify that there's parts to this little bit that they perceive as a little bit that they wish was bigger, and parts of this big bit that they wish was smaller. And then you can start talking about, okay, what might that be, what might that look like, what do you have in mind? you can even, I know the sky's the limit with this, so I've just got to be careful I don't just sit here all afternoon, you know. But the sky's the limit because they can talk to the creative part of self as well. They can talk to the creative part of self. They can talk to those parts and talk. They can, sort of hear a response. Really, to be honest. So another thing that's quite nice to do as well is, do you want to arrange them in a certain way? Does they feel okay as they are now, or do you want to think of a different way of arranging them? And they might like, oh, that one kind of goes beyond that one. That one's hiding. That one's right over there, and this one's over here. And again, can you say any more about the fact that you've arranged them in this way? So very person-centered, very non-directional. Using items is directional. It just is, because we're getting this out. This is the direction. Unless, of course, the client has said, I really want to work with them nesting dolls, and sometimes they do. But you can work with resources in a very person-centered way, and that's kind of how I found my way with it. So I hope that is useful. There's lots of people walking past, so we're not thinking, what is that girl doing? And that's fine, it might give them something to think about, and something. I always think a little bit of unusual stuff happening in the world is nice. So yes, I hope that's useful. Thank you for watching.